Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Martin.
And it's time to go through the papers now. And joining us this morning is journalist and author Susan Holder and journalist and commentator Ella Whelan. Good morning to you both. Very good to see you. And Susan, let's start with you, shall we? The front page of The Eye and Chinese and Russian hackers breaking into the UK Foreign Office. This is quite alarming.
Yes, not with a kind of rusty key or anything. It's all through the computers, obviously. Not to be too alarmist about it, because it does say that they didn't get anything that was that classified. There was actually not marked as classified what they got into. The problem is, of course, is that it's what could happen. So apparently, it's literally as simple as what you always tell your mum not to do. Don't click on the something dodgy link in an email that you don't know what it is. If you get an email from somebody and there's a link in it, don't click on it, people. The fact that I have to explain that to the Foreign Office, however, that's why we're in trouble, isn't it? Because that's what's happened. And it would appear that Russian and Chinese hackers accessed Foreign Office internal systems. So it was a major security breach in as much as it shouldn't happen. It wasn't a major security breach. In fact, they didn't really get anything, only that diplomats could be placed in hostile environments, could be at risk because their details were there. That's as much as it was. The problem is with all of this is the big danger that we've got, isn't it? It's always going to be something cyber, something computer-based. That is what is going to be the undoing of a situation. I don't know why we worry about anything else, because we have so much of our lives now tied up with things online and to do with emails and to do with computers that literally, if someone just kind of messes with that, we're all done for, and that is the risk.
It makes you wonder, Ella, how much of an issue this is, or how much we just like a good spy story. I mean, last week it was Chinese cars are spying on us. They're recording our conversations. They're taking videos of us. The Electoral Commission was hacked into, was it 40 million sets of details, excluding home addresses, were exposed. Is this just a part of the fabric of the way we live now, or is it something we should genuinely be worried about?
Well, I remember a few months ago there was a concern about cars of officials and ministers working for the government being hacked, but because there was, technology within that could trace them and things like that. There's always been this concern, but I think as Susan points out, the issue is actually it might be based within computers, but it's always human error. And we have so much worry about AI, and maybe later on in the next round I'll be talking about Oliver Dowden and panics about AI and what the robots are going to do to threaten us. But most of the time it isn't a robot. It's a human error. It's a misplaced file. It's an email that's mishandled or whatever. But there is, obviously there is a serious question about security threats, but I think we have to also remember that there's a background discussion or narrative to this, which is that geopolitical concerns about China, about Russia, that always brings these stories to the front pages, even if, as Susan says, nothing actually necessarily happened, rather than some government officials being a bit red-faced.
OK, Ella, let's have a look at the Daily Mail, shall we? And this is about Gogglebox. It could be bad.
In terms of killjoy sort of stories, this is one of the worst. But anybody who watches Gogglebox, I watch it religiously, knows that, and you watch it for what they're going to say. But I also analyse their snacks. So each individual household or family, has a different kind of snack. There's one family that has Bakewell tarts. There's a sort of slightly more middle class families who have sort of pop chips or something, and it's part of the fabric of the show. But apparently, according to Professor Tim Spector, who, full disclosure, is got this new nutritional podcast, an organisation called Zoe, the nutrition firm, which is all about, looking at your gut microbe and institutionalising killjoyness, and by saying you shouldn't eat anything nice, has said that it's a terrible thing. And obviously, yes, eating crap after 9 p.m, not so good for you. You should be eating your dinner, and then that's about it, because, especially if you want to watch your weight. But everybody knows that there's, when you're watching your favourite television shows, you like to have a biscuit, a cup of tea, or whatever else. And I think it's just indicative of the fact that these sort of stories keep coming up, and this sort of hectoring keeps coming up, is the idea that we cannot help ourselves but see bad things on television and immediately reach for the sweet cupboard, that there's no self-control within people, and that's obviously a nonsense.
There's a lot of snobbery, I think, in it as well. It's like, the working classes who watch TV just can't help themselves by gorging on burgers and pizzas and becoming obese and a liability to society. It's like, can we just watch the telly and enjoy it?
Yeah.
It's actually one of the few enjoyable things left for a lot of people.
There was snacking way before Gogglebox. I hate to break it to Mr. Spector, but Gogglebox didn't invent it as well. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not linked.
What's your favourite telly snack? Settling down.
Ooh, I like a Dorito.
Dorito.
Because they just endlessly...
Other crisps are available.
They are, yeah.
Yeah, you can't have an open tube of Pringles in the house, can you? And know they're open without having to go there. I
Pop, you
find.
can't stop.
Ella?
I don't like dark chocolate digestives, and I have tried to be on a diet, so my husband's only allowed to buy dark chocolate digestives so that I don't want one late at night.
I prefer them to the milk chocolate.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I do.
See, the thing is, if you're desperate, though, you'll suddenly get a kind of yearning for them.
Yeah.
That's the
it.
I won't enjoy it, but I will eat it. Yeah.
Needs
Force
must.
yourself.
Needs must.
Another great pleasure, of course, is the British boozer. Now, we've been talking about the wonkiest pub in Britain.
Yeah.
Now it appears what was confirmed as an arson attack. And what's the story in today's Mirror? They want it to be rebuilt
Yes.
by brick.
Well, absolutely. So they've messed with the wrong pub here. The most crooked thing about the crooked pub, it seems to be quite what's happened to it, actually. Now, full disclosure, it's in the Black Country. I'm a Black Country girl. My first ever job as a journalist was on the Black Country Bugle. That's how Black Country I am.
Beautiful.
So, and it would appear that the people locally to where this pub has been demolished, it was bought, it then caught fire just days later, and within 24 hours, I think, it was completely demolished against what the council wanted. The council wanted it to be preserved as much as possible, and no one could get near the pub when it was on fire or when it was being demolished because strange heaps of dirt had been put there, which seemed to be blocking people's access. Now, the local people are up in arms about this, and the mayor, Andy Street, the mayor of Birmingham, Andy Street, has vowed he wants it to be built back brick by brick. Whether that's possible or not, I don't know. But you've seen Peaky Blinders, haven't you?
Yeah.
We're a hard lot in the Black Country, and we take our pubs very seriously.
Yeah.
And it is an outrage that the Crooked House has been demolished in this way, and people are very, very upset about it, and it is a real loss. There's also some... In the Daily Express, it also has a slightly different angle, where it says that if you look at the pictures inside it, everything was so lopsided inside. It had stood for 260 years, but had started to kind of subside because of the subsidence. There was a grandfather clock, which was at a very weird angle. Grandfather clock didn't seem to be kind of there. They suspect it was removed beforehand. There's lots of kind of things all taking place in the research to see what actually went on. But wouldn't it be great if we could actually build that back? That would be brilliant.
And it seems to matter so much to the local community as well. I mean, after it was demolished to rubble, people were actually going almost like pay homage to this pub.
One of the best things I've seen on the internet, people have been putting signs up. One of them, and you'd have to come from the Black Country to kind of understand it, but there was a big sign put up that said, "Was Boston," which means good, "was Boston now Bosted." Bosted means broken.
Yep.
So, yeah, that the Black Country have kind of taken it very seriously.
I did a lot of campaign in the Black Country, and, you know, the Banks's ales, for starters, cracking pint a bit. And also, what I love is you have the cheese and onion cobs on the bars. They're called cobs. They're called rolls elsewhere.
Cobs, yeah, cobs.
Yeah, cheese, onion, cob, just under a cover. Pork scratchings, Black Country pork scratchings are the best on the planet. And I think they've messed with something at their peril here. Because
they really have.
It's struck to the heart of something that really matters.
Yeah.
Not just the pub, is it?
Yeah, my husband actually worked for Banks's for a while. There was a kind of a big Noddy Holder advert with for Banks's beer. Yeah, no, you can't mess with your pub, and you certainly can't do what's happened here. And I do think there will be more to come on this story for sure.
There will be too. Ella, let's have a look at the front page of the Daily Mail, shall we? And this is a trans row over women's wards.
Yeah, so this is a story that's been, a discussion that's been going on for a long time about what's happening in hospitals in relation to the provision and treatment of transgender patients. So you have someone who comes and says, my gender doesn't match with my biological sex, and therefore I'd like to be on a different ward. Usually, most of the time, it's a biological trans woman wanting to be put in a women's ward or treated in a women's ward. And, there has been some kind of consternation about this. In 2010, the government said that it was, caused indignity and was an assault to dignity to have mixed wards. Later in 2021, there was a review to look at the fact that there was potentially even sex offenders being put on women's wards. That review seems to disappear into nowhere. And so the Daily Mail has done this Freedom of Information request, sent out to all NHS hospital trusts, 65 65 replied. And of those 65, they said that they confirmed that they allowed transgender patients to use the facilities of their choice. And not only that, but that there was no restrictions on who counts as a transgender patient. Now, you know, I think nobody would have any problem with the idea that every patient, whatever gender or whatever you are, being treated with respect and dignity and being kept happy and safe throughout your medical procedure. But there is a much larger question here, which is that there are single-sex spaces, particularly in places like hospitals, are necessary for a reason. It's a very vulnerable... You know, I've just been in one recently having a baby. There is a particular vulnerability to yourself when you are a medical patient. You're walking around with a hospital gown with your backside showing, you know, you need to go to the loo in the middle of the night, all these things. There's a reason why single-sex wards are important. And the fact that the NHS seems to be completely blind to the reality in relation to this, and even to be going as far as the Mail reports that some trusts, you know, in Sussex being the most famous, but also North Cumbria, having pregnancy policies that refer to pregnant people or birthing persons because, as the NHS Trust states, maternity services have typically been designed as a cisgender women-only service, as if that was the most terrible thing in the world. How dare cisgender women be the only one that have babies? This is just madness. But it's not only madness, it's also quite dangerous because it means that women's hard-won rights are safety, but also just our dignity, our privacy is on the line. And that's not to say that every trans person wants to come in and make people feel uncomfortable. Of course not, but there will always be bad actors.
What's it going to take before we have a sudden outbreak of common sense and something is done about this? Because we saw with the Isla Bryson case in Scotland, a bloke who previously had raped 2 women, put into a women's prison. That was reversed when there's a huge outcry. There's a case here from March last year where a biological man in a hospital ward raped a patient, a woman, but was told it wasn't possible to be a rape because they weren't a man. When did this go so badly wrong?
Well,
and when will this stop?
Well, we just have to keep talking, and I think women have to start standing up for ourselves a little bit more. We've always done it, and we were never afraid to do it before, and women are becoming afraid to say what they really feel about this.
Well, you see the likes of J.K. Rowling.
Yes,
if
because none of us want to be cancelled. That's not what anybody wants. None of us also want to, as Ella just, you know, perfectly put it, everyone is entitled to live exactly how they want and be treated with respect, and we all think that.
That should include women's safety.
But that should include women. And it also strikes me that nobody ever gets asked what is a man. We're only ever asked what to define ourselves constantly. And I do think, I mean, the thing about the hospitals, what really kind of surprises me is the one place where you really do need to kind of stick to biology and talk about what people's sex actually is when you're receiving medical treatment.
Well, you're at your most vulnerable.
Well, it's not just that. It's just that you can identify how you like, you can live the way you want, you can wear what you want to wear, but you cannot say that you are one thing if you're being treated medically for another. And I think what will happen is this is a generation. When we get a few years down the line and people who have lived happily, however they want, for years, start receiving or having to receive, unfortunately, medical treatment for things that are to do with their biological sex, it will come home to everybody that actually there are things that you can't get away from. And when you're dealing with somebody's prostate or you're dealing with somebody's womb or their ovaries, that is biology. And you can present and live how you wish, but you cannot blur the lines in a medical environment. And I don't think it's very healthy to do that because you could make mistakes. And I think when mistakes start happening that actually, unfortunately, might affect transgender people, then maybe people will wake up even more. But I do think women have to start speaking out for themselves and saying, up with this, we will not put.
Yeah.
Well, you will have a view on that at home. Do let us know what you make of that. gbviews@gbnews.com. Susan, let's have a look at the Times. We'll stay with you. And this is an interesting one. Youngsters are apparently seeking out lazy girl jobs. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, I've picked this one because it's actually the conversation I had with my cab driver this morning. Strangely. So
Very good having a conversation that early in the morning.
He was very chatty. It was very good, actually. Woke me right up. It was lovely. So this is in the Times. And it says that on TikTok, I mean, that's where everything is, isn't it? Apparently, I'm not there, so I don't know what's going on. It's quite, I think I'll stick with my ignorance, actually. But a recruitment company is promoting the fact that lazy girl jobs, I presume it's lazy, but I don't know why we're just sticking to girls and why there aren't lazy boys. But they're recommending that people be the second worst performing person and you'll do all right. What's all that about? And they're saying that the Generation Z, whatever that is, people born after 1997, if you're not sure, I'm never sure of those titles, they don't want jobs that actually involve too much effort. They want kind of an easy life. Well, don't we all? But it doesn't really work like that. My cab driver this morning was bemoaning the fact that we are very lacking in black cab drivers in London because nobody wants to take the knowledge anymore. It can take up to 4 years to study the knowledge, to know so you know all of the streets of London. And he also, in the pandemic, had already had a trade as a butcher, so was able to go back to that. And he was going on about how he can't understand why people don't want to get a trade, don't want to do jobs that actually contribute to society. And he was really proud of the fact that he had paid for it, bought a house, paid for his own wedding, and had got a baby on the way. And it was all kind of through his hard work and effort that he'd done that.
I'm going to quickly bring you in on this one, Ella. This is like the ceiling of low aspiration, it would seem. It was basically, it's the working from homers gaming how to do as little as possible while getting us paid as much as possible. Is that empowerment? Is this feminism? Or is it just basically bone-idle people who've got used to being in their pyjamas with their lattes?
I'm not split on this one. On the one hand, in a superficial way, obviously, all of us, if we could make a quick buck doing nothing, wouldn't that be nice? And I know what I'd spend my time doing if it wasn't working. On the other hand, it is very short-sighted, and it should be the adults in the room, whether it's, parents or an older generation, getting young people to realise that actually, in terms of your life, you get much more fulfilment if you get good at something and do something which is fulfilling. It doesn't matter what that is, but if you have, in particular, actually, I think in particular with young men, having a skill, having a trade can do a huge amount for them in terms of not just self-esteem, but feeling that you are worthwhile and that is a genuine thing, that you can do something that other people can't do. And so I think, as much as the scrolling on TikTok might make you and social media managers and all this thing is a very sort of Gen Z, and by the way, I'm over 30, so I'm as in the dark as you with this. I don't go anywhere near TikTok. It is attractive. It's a bubble that's going to burst at some point. And I don't think anybody really, if they think about it, wants to wake up 30 and realising that the only thing they can do is scroll.
And not having a purpose is terrible for your mental health.
Yeah.
It's a really bad thing.
We saw a lot of that during lockdown. Look, guys, a huge injection of common sense this morning on the paper review. Thank you very much, Ella Whelan, and, of course, Suze Holder. Thank you very much. Superb.
Yeah, fab. Really good to see you both.